Chapter 14. Janie, Doc said, your daughter has something to tell you. Mama looked at Doc, then back at me before she put down the sweetgrass basket she was weaving. She settled herself back in her rocking chair and pressed her lips together like she knew it was going to be something bad. I didn't know how to tell her. How could I tell her that I almost died? Doc seemed to read my mind. Just say it straight out. Easiest way. Beside me, Jay's face was solemn. I shoved my hands in my pockets and wrapped Dinah's hair around the fingers of my right hand. My shaking eased up, but only a little bit. Jez, Mama prompted. Then I told her what happened in the marsh. It came out fast, like pouring water out of a bucket. I told her everything, about the pins and the marks on my skin, about the face in the water, about how it wasn't the face that scared me so much, but the teeth. I kept the part about floating up out of my body to myself. A few times, Mama opened her mouth, but she stopped herself from saying anything. One time she tried to sit forward in her rocking chair or maybe get up, but Doc put a hand on her shoulder and she stayed seated. At the end of the tale, I puffed out of breath, tired from talking. My shoulders slumped and I felt an ache like I was a bruise where the ghost hand grabbed me. The whole room was quiet, waiting for Mama to say something. She closed her eyes tight, like I did when I didn't want to see something scary, but hers was like she was also trying to hold something in. When she opened her eyes, I saw what it was. Tears. Jezebel, listen to me very carefully. Here? Yes, ma'am. That was no doll in the water. Here? Yes, ma'am. Sorry. How do you know that? I asked. You don't even do root magic. Mama pressed her lips together again. I wondered if she was about to tell me it was full grown folk business like she did when I asked about Daddy, but she surprised me by answering. I don't work root by my own choice. Her fingers wove the sweetgrass in her lap, twisting and tugging the strands into perfect place. She did it without looking at her hands because her gaze was on me. But your grand taught me lessons just like your uncle is teaching you and Jay. I simply decided I didn't want to learn anymore, for reasons I will tell you when you're older. Never did I think of Mama as getting root lessons from Gran. I never thought of her even being my age at all. Oh, I said, well, if it wasn't a doll in the water, what was it? That was a poppet. Poppet. That's what the thing in the water called me. I rubbed the ache in my arm where one of the ghost pins had gone through me. Beside Mama, Doc was nodding, and I realized she really didn't know a whole lot more than she told us. Jay piped up. What's a poppet? A poppet looks like a doll, but is filled with magic. Doc answered this time. They can be used like traps left by someone to do harm to people. Is Dinah a poppet? I asked. I put my hand in my pocket to make sure she was there. If she could talk, she would probably say, Nah, I is me. I could hear her voice in my head, but I smiled and rubbed my hand over her hair. But when I looked back at Mama, she wasn't smiling at all. Her hands clutched the half-made basket so tight I could hear the sweetgrass crunch. I want you to stay away from that marsh from now on, understand? I shouldn't have to let you go out there today at all, what with that trap you found last time. Besides, you're growing up, and there's no reason for you to be running and ripping around that place. No buts, no back talk. You know what this poppet means? It means there is something out there, and that something is trying to capture you, trying to take your magic. So you stay out of that marsh, am I clear? Yes, ma'am, I whispered, glancing beside me. Jay's face crumpled like he wanted to give me a hug, but he didn't dare risk it, not when he wasn't sure what Mama would do. And I was nervous, too, because when Mama rose from her chair, but when she got over to me, she just kneeled down. I appreciate you for telling me this story, she said. I know it wasn't easy, so thank you. I looked into Mama's face, and she was smiling. It was a wobbly smile, but it was there. You're welcome. She hugged me, and I breathed in the sweet orange scent of her hair dressing. My arms wrapped around her, too. Finally, I felt Jay's skinny arms around me, and Mama embraced us both. The scariest thing I can think of is something bad happening to one of you. That's why I have to give punishments. She let me go and looked me in the eyes. This isn't your fault, Jez, but you have to be careful. Promise? I promise. Magic hummed inside me, warm and full. Before, I wasn't sure I could be a root worker, but now I was. I thought about the marsh, not the poppet grabbing me, but what had happened when I tried to get away. When I lifted out of my body, I was getting stronger. Someone wanted that power, my power. My magic was what made me special, what made me a Turner. I wouldn't let anyone take that away. The punishment Mama had mentioned wasn't too severe. I had to help her out on the farm early in the mornings for the next week. Nothing too much, because I was sore from my run-in with a poppet yesterday. The balm Mama smeared on my cuts and bruises made them feel a little better, though. When I got out onto the porch early that morning, I heard Mama at the chicken coop talking with one of her customers about me. "Have you ever had a child that wanted to eat nothing but rice?" Mama asked the woman as she packed her eggs up. "Just plain, no gravy or butter or nothing?" The woman was older than Mama, closer to the age Gran was when she died. Her thick gray hair was a wig. I could tell that even from where I was, across the yard from the coop. "Just rice? That all?" The older woman lifted her bony shoulders in a shrug. "Cheerin' got all kind of foibles nowadays, running around wild, doing all they want to do." The old woman stopped to count the number of her eggs, her lips slightly moving. "Least rice is cheap. Be glad the child ain't only eating meat. Then you'd have a time." She pulled a few coins out of her snap purse and put them in Mama's hand. She turned away to go back down the road, then stopped. "Is it the gal?" she asked, "only wanting the rice?" "Yes'm," Mama said. "Then keep eyes on her. Might be time for her woman trouble." The look on Mama's face was open and understanding. What trouble do women get that men didn't get? Babies? Were they trouble? I guess me and Jay could be difficult sometimes, but I didn't think we were trouble as babies. As the old woman passed the porch, she gave me a close look. I greeted her, and she returned it, peering at me until she eased along up the road, leaning on her dark wood cane. Before Mama could leave the coop, I went to find Jay. He was shoving his feet into his socks and yawning. "That old lady who buys eggs from Mama thinks I'm getting woman trouble," I told him. His face knotted up. "What's woman trouble? You ain't no woman." "I'm getting to be." He said, thoughtful, as he wedged his feet into his shoes. "Maybe. You scared?" "No," I lied. Then, a little. I didn't want things to change. If I had woman trouble, that meant I was a woman, and I couldn't carry Dinah anymore because dolls were for kids. I thought of the things Mama and my teachers didn't do. Climb trees, run in the marsh. It didn't seem fair, and I made up my mind to ask Mama what the trouble was with being a woman. As for the rice, Mama was right. It was all I seemed to be hungry for lately. I usually loved all of Mama's cooking and most of Doc's when Mama let him use the kitchen, but lately things changed. I tried eating other things, but they felt wrong in my mouth. I only wanted the rice, and I ate it at every meal. We had rice most days for dinner, but I didn't want it with peas or butter beans or even collard greens. I wanted it all by itself. I didn't see anything wrong with that. The old lady said it was cheap, so why was Mama worried? I couldn't understand it, and I told Jay so. "I don't care as long as I get to eat the rest of your food, but why do you want that much plain rice? Ain't you tired of it?" I just shrugged as we went out the back door to do chores. Today I fed the chickens, gathered eggs, and plucked the ripest tomatoes before the birds got to them. I was sweeping the kitchen floor when Jay came in lugging 2 peach baskets full of ripe vegetables and plucked them on the table. Sure enough, at breakfast, Mama made oatmeal with spoonfuls of her scuppernong jelly, but I pushed at the bowl until Jay grabbed it and shoveled it into his mouth. Mama then made me a bowl of cream of rice, and I happily ate it. If I had to go back to school today, at least I could eat what I wanted. No one bothered me that day, but the school day still took forever, and when it was finally over, I got a long cold drink from the water fountain in case Jay might want to walk home together. We hadn't done it in a while, but after yesterday, I thought maybe he might leave his friends and walk with me instead. When he didn't show, I looked in the cafeteria and out on the ball field. No Jay. I dragged myself towards the front gate, tired from the early morning work mixed with a long school day. That's when I saw Susie. She stood there against a tree to the right of one of the gates. Her body didn't move, only her eyes did. I slowed down on my steps. Her dark eyes stayed on me as I got closer and closer to the front gates of the school. A breeze blew up and it smelled like the marsh. "Are you waiting for me?" I asked. "Yep," Susie said. Since I'd gone home early after lunch yesterday, I hadn't had a chance to talk to her about what happened or hear why she had gone to the principal's office, and I spent lunch today talking with Miss Corey. "I heard about what happened yesterday, and I was worried about you," she continued. She rubbed her lips together like Mama did when she put on lipstick. "Do you want to walk home together today?" I smiled. "Sure. I was going to see if Jay was around to walk too, though. Have you seen him?" That was when I saw some branches rustle on the chinaberry tree across the road from the school. Then I heard a shout. When I moved closer and peered through the gates, I saw what looked like Jay's bag on the ground. If he was hurt, I didn't know if any teachers would leave the school to help. I held my own bag close, ran out of the school gates, and jogged across the road towards the tree. I felt someone next to me and saw Susie at my side. It was quiet for a moment, and we stopped to listen. When I glanced over at Susie, she nodded like she understood the thoughts going through my head. Slowly, I moved closer. You sure? It was Jay's voice. I breathed in relief and walked over to the tree to tell him off, but what I saw stopped me in my tracks. Jay was sitting under the chinaberry tree with a boy I didn't know. I guessed he was from Jay's class. The other boy had his back to the tree, and Jay was in front of him, holding out his hand. The boy whispered something I couldn't hear. Then he pulled out a small knife. I gasped out loud, then covered my mouth with my hand to stop the noise, but it was too late. They heard me and jerked apart like they were caught having cookies before dinner. Jez, what are you doing here? Jay asked, a guilty look on his face. Looking for you. I frowned at both of them. I thought maybe you'd want to walk home together today. Jay looked embarrassed, but the other boy spoke up. I was just going to make a small cut on his hand like mine. He held up his hand to show me. Then we shake hands and mix blood so we can be blood brothers. Blood brothers? I shook my real brother's shoulder. You're already somebody's brother, mine. It's not for true, the boy said, reaching out with the knife again. Are you stupid or something? That's when Susie made a sound in her throat like a growl. No, she's not. The boy gulped, then bent down and grabbed his books before running off back to the school gates. What'd you do that for? Jay said, his eyes angry. I wanted to have a brother. Why, I'm my sister, but you ain't no boy. You ain't the same. He grabbed up his books and ran off towards home, leaving me standing there with Susie. My mouth dropped open in surprise, my heart sinking into my stomach. I knew things had gotten strange between us, but I didn't know Jay wanted a brother. Was I not enough? Jez? Susie nudged me with her shoulder. I didn't answer. I couldn't. After all the times Mama and Doc had told me and Jay to look out for each other, after the poppet in the marsh had almost got me, I stood there, frozen. The poppet's words echoed in my head. Lonely girl. Then Susie touched my arm, turned me to face her. Her eyes looked like little flashes of lightning. Are you okay? Come on, let's walk home. I don't know, I told her. Excuse me. Come on, let's walk home. My bag slid down my shoulder and I hitched it up. We walked the path side by side. Birdsong accompanied us, along with the scuttle of fat-cheeked squirrels, searching for nuts among the trees. I took a deep breath of sweet, hot air and blew it out. The worry about Jay was slowly flowing away, like the tide ebbing back out to sea. Susie cocked her head in my direction, but didn't change her steps. I noticed her hair wasn't in the usual crown of braids. It looked almost exactly like mine, parted in the middle, with a goody elastic on each plump, twisted ponytail. Are you mad at your brother? I thought about it for a minute, letting the fresh wind blow over me. I could smell the last of the heavy, ripe watermelons on the vine in the field as we passed. More surprised? I didn't know he wanted a brother. Doesn't mean he doesn't care about you, Susie said. I know, but I stopped, not sure I wanted to tell her everything in my head. Susie looked at me with her eyebrows raised, but didn't say anything. She waited for me to speak, but I didn't know what to say. I thought I'd found a powder inside myself when I escaped that poppet in the marsh. I'd felt connected to my ancestors, my past, my future. This business with Jay made me think that it was my present that was the real problem. While I walked with Susie, all I could hear was the sound of home, the wind through the live oak trees, our shoes scuffling on the hard-packed dirt, shirts on nearby clotheslines snapping in the wind, the splash of birds fishing in the water. Susie stayed next to me, let me walk without saying anything until I was ready. It felt comfortable. It felt good. It felt like what having a friend should feel like. Me and Jay used to tell each other everything, I said finally. Do everything together. Look out for each other. We're twins. I looked down at my shoes as I said the words, barely missing stepping on a dead grasshopper. Ants marched all over it on top, around, taking pieces of it home for the winter. I rubbed the goosebumps that prickled on my arms away. I don't know if he wants me around anymore. She nodded. You feel like a part of you is gone. I nodded. I understand. Susie sounded as sad as I was. What about root work? Is there, I don't know, some spell that can help you fix it? I hadn't considered that. A root bag might work, but it also felt strange to think of using magic to make Jay care about me. I don't know, I said. I'm still new to it. There's a lot to learn. Do you have a sister or brother? I asked, changing the subject. Susie shook her head. That's one of the reasons I'm glad I found you to sit with me at lunch with this year. I smiled. Me too. Can I ask you something? I guess, I answered, shrugging. About what? Root work. Before I could say anything, she spoke again, quickly. I'm not going to be nasty, I promise. It's just I can't help but hear kids talking about your magic, what your family does. Some of them are mean about it, but it's not like their families do magic, so how would they know? She met my eyes, so I wanted to ask you personally. This was more than anyone else at school had ever done, asking me about Root instead of joking about something they didn't understand. Sure, you can ask. What is Root? Is it real magic? Susie asked. I didn't answer at first. What should I tell her? She wasn't family, but wasn't it a good idea to try and educate people who didn't know about Root but wanted to? Wouldn't that help to fix the problems I'd been having, the ones Mama and Doc had spoken about all root workers having? That no one, not even other Negroes, understood what it was we did? I thought about it for a long time without talking. Soon we'd be at the road that led to my house. Susie kicked at a mound of fine dirt, and a flood of reddish ants poured out, but she walked through them without a blink. My family doesn't do root magic, she said, like she was confessing something. They don't even talk about it, except to tell me to stay away from anyone who does it because they can hurt me. But I don't think you'd ever hurt anyone. Is that why you can't have me over to your house? Susie sighed. Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you for being honest with me, I told her, but you don't have anything to worry about. Root is a part of my family, part of our history, a connection to the earth and our ancestors. I didn't know if I should tell Susie much more than that, about haints and boo hags and all the other strange things I was learning about, the strange things I was learning to do. Maybe someday. But is it real magic? She asked, looking at me with her black patent leather eyes. I thought about what Doc said to me and Jay when he first told us he was going to teach us Root. It is to me, I said, and smiled. We walked faster the closer we got to home, where the live oak trees spread their branches wide, giving cooling relief from the sun's embrace. At least I didn't think we did, because the time seemed to fly away faster than usual. When we got to the edge of the marsh near our farm, where Susie usually stopped, she kept walking with me. Do you want to come over? I asked. I could see Doc's cabin and our Hank blue house from where I was. When Susie looked up, her steps halted. No, not today, Jess. I only wanted to walk with you a little longer. Sure you don't want to come in? My mama probably won't be home, but we could have a snack. Sorry, I can't. I have to leave now, she said. Tilting her head towards me, she waved. See you later, okay? Susie seemed to glide when she moved away. After a few steps, she turned back and gave me a strong hug. Then she ran off, disappearing into the thick stalks of corn bordering one of the farms that led around the opposite side of the marsh.